If you go down to the woods today, you're sure for a big surprise.
I
Don't know the rest of the song.
will not engage in this juvenile.
You did it when we did this last year.
Did I?
Yeah.
I don't know that I did.
I think it's recorded.
Well, I tell you what, ADR in the clip of me doing it here.
Nah, I'm gonna do it. Because I want to do the fun thing of going in low, and then wherever the line is after that, which I don't know, then I was gonna go beneath the trees where nobody sees. Where that's
Well, should we start again then?
No, I think we've captured the vibe of the podcast already.
This is the current vibe of today's podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway, hello.
Should we cue music or
cue the fucking music? Hello.
I'll put that over the top. Anyway, welcome back to the Comic Lira podcast. We're spooky season.
That was a good one this week.
Yeah, it was a good. I'm feeling it. As we get closer to the date, I feel the spirit of Jack Skellington more and more.
Well, it's actually Halloween.
Yeah, as we get closer to the date, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like my powers are growing.
It's October. It's actually Halloween month.
It is. We did, for the listeners will know, if you listen to the past few weeks, we did prematurely spook before October. But
how many weeks? Is this week 3?
This is week 3 for us, and then we've got 2 more after this.
Yeah, so the first one released on...
like 29th of September.
That's not bad.
Yeah, I know. It's only a little premature, so it's not a big deal.
Wait, so is this the third one we're recording?
This is the third one, yes.
What were the first 2?
First one was Marvel Zombies, and then the second one was Exquisite Corpses.
Yeah. I actually have some follow-up notes from our historical correspondent that we will get into later.
Fair enough. Well, anyone who doesn't know, again, this is the Comic Lira podcast. I'm Ryan. This is Jamie.
Hello.
We comically and literary review podcasts, all that. Most pretentious, very lowbrow. And with me, as always, my insidious co-host. I did make a note of that. I put a lot of effort into something that no one else cares about in describing you each week, which also just sums up podcasts in general.
Absolutely. So, we've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, don't think about how long it's been.
Do you know what? One of my colleagues asked me about it today, and I was like, I think it's been 3 years.
It will be soon.
In February?
Yeah, I don't want to think about the passage of time right now. That's too scary. What I do want to think about is anthropomorphic serial killers, because we're doing the sequel to Beneath the Trees, Rite of Spring, which also, there's only 3 issues out. And the 4th issue is mid-November, which unfortunately might conflict with a very important thing happening in our lives, or your lives specifically.
I suppose it's more important for me than it is for you.
Yeah, I mean, it affects me, unfortunately, as other people's problems do, unfortunately.
I don't know if I'd call it a problem.
Inconvenience, you say. But yeah, there's only 3 issues out. I thought we kind of have to do it now, while it's spooky season, we won't get a chance. And I did kind of worry. I was like, are we going to get enough to talk about with just 3 issues? I think there's a lot to talk about in this.
Yeah, there's loads. So should we start with what we think of it?
Do you want to? Well, yeah. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a sequel series to a series I think we did last year, which is called Beneath the Trees, and I enjoyed it. I think as much, maybe even a little more than I did the first one.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's going in more interesting directions.
Yeah.
Do you want to remind the kind listeners what the general plot of this story is?
Yes. So Beneath the Trees is set in what looks like a very idyllic Wind of the Willows kind of town.
Yeah, I was reminded of hearing from something else, the description, which then I relate to you outside the podcast. It's a Sylvanian Families-esque setting.
Yeah, exactly. So very cutesy anthropomorphic animals. We follow a protagonist who is an anthropomorphic bear. She runs the local hardware store. She is a pillar of her community. And she is a serial killer.
Yeah, and not the cool ones we normally get as protagonists in shows like Dexter, but even a little more unhinged and evil, I think.
Yeah, so she's a very good serial killer. And she goes from her small town where she lives, which is kind of pegged as being sort of upstate New York, isn't it?
Upstate. I think it could be any state almost.
Yeah, so she lives sort of upstate and she goes generally into the city and does a murder.
Yep.
And continues to get away with it. The plot of the first one is that people start being killed actually in the town. And that is very threatening to her because it, draws attention to her. It's also her MO as well that they're using. Turns out it's her best friend's son.
MO being modus operandi.
Modus
That's
operandi.
A Twin Peaks quote for reference for anyone interested.
Nice.
Talking about killings in small towns.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've thrown you off there.
It transpires that it's her best friend's son who has noticed that she's a serial killer and is doing copycat murders, but he's not quite as thoughtful as she is.
Yeah,
with it.
very Dexter Series 1 connections and similarities. For anyone who knows that. Like the series, it's interesting that a fiction about a serial killer, it follows like the other major serial killer fiction of Dexter, of that kind of plot in the first series.
So yeah, that's the plot of this one. So the bear Sally, I think her name is?
Sam.
Yes. Sam gets away with it at the end.
People find out about the best friend's son and they're like, oh, he must have done all the murders.
Well, she frames him, doesn't
Yes.
she? So she kills his mum and then frames him for it. And it's all a bit brutal. So this one opens. I mean, again, we should probably talk about the art.
Yeah, we'll be starting with the arting. Now then we'll get into the story. Even though our starting with the arting happens sometimes halfway through an episode, we're like, we should probably talk about the comic.
I mean, we're only 7 minutes in. That's not bad.
Yeah, no, we're good. We're doing good on this one. And to be fair, arting-wise, and again, I will link the previous series episode in the show notes if you do want to listen to that. If you somehow haven't and do want to listen to that before we talk about this, I think art is basically the same.
Largely the same.
And what we almost bloody forgot is the credits, which it ties into the line because it is actually written and illustrated by one Patrick Horvath.
Yeah.
So again, I think I always have a little bit of extra admiration for someone who's not only written and drawn a comic, but has done good jobs on both. Not even just good jobs, great jobs on both of those things. Peach Momoko is another one from Ultimate X-Men, and Daniel Warren Johnson from the Transformers series. Those are the kind of main ones I always think of who are doing it right now. But yeah, extra credit is what I'm saying. So good on you, Patrick.
Yeah, 100%. And he's done a great job. And yeah, it looks just as good as the first one.
Yeah.
The first one looked great. This looks great too.
Great splash panels that are both beautiful and somewhat horrific. It balances those two things quite well, which reminds me quite a bit of the Hannibal TV show with Mads Mikkelsen.
Yes.
Always very beautiful series, and also made his cooking look very good.
Yeah.
Which is such a clever thing to do for a Hannibal show where you're like, God damn, I know that's human, but it looks delicious.
It looks absolutely majestic.
Yeah.
We talked about this almost ad nauseum in the first episode, but the juxtaposition of this very cool sort of 1960s old worldy children, vintage children's animation sort of art style juxtaposed with all the serial killing and remains very cool and very interesting. Kind
of Wind of the Willows-esque, which like
a little bit Wind of the Willows, a little bit Transylvania.
You're in spooky season mode. You're thinking of wrong type of spooks.
Wrong type of spooks.
Yeah.
A little bit of Sylvanian families, maybe, juxtaposed with all the serial killings.
A little bit of Arthur. You remember Arthur?
Yeah, man.
Some younger viewers might only know him from the clenched fist meme.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And the, I'm not going to pay attention to that because I can't read. But it's also that. It's Arthur-esque.
Yeah, a little bit, actually. A little bit. And it still looks great.
Yes.
I think quality has... The quality is carried through. I think what's so interesting here is that I was a little bit unsure as to how they would make a sequel work.
Yeah.
And then they absolutely had such a cool idea for the sequel that I'm like, now having read the first 3 issues of it, I'm like, oh, we would have been being robbed if we didn't get this sequel.
Oh, for sure. And it's always a big thing of like, what do you even do for a sequel? But in all kind of mediums. I think with this, they cleverly used a natural follow-on from the first series, but with added twists and turns. And I don't know what's going to happen next. The only other stuff I was going to say for the art, and it's probably stuff I said when we last did it, the facial expressions on the animals, I think is really good.
Yeah.
And probably a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
Draw a dog that looks like solemn speaking to a murder victim's family, doing stuff like that. He's done it really well here. And there's visual jokes in the art, which somehow, like, this is one of the few mediums, I think, because of the gap in between, where I kind of laughed and enjoyed the same joke twice.
Yes.
Specifically, the sheriff is a bloodhound.
Yes.
Like, things like that, I'm like, that's clever again. I forgot that, and now I'm laughing at it.
I forgot that, and now it's made me chuckle again.
Exactly. But I think that's as much as we can say on the art, right?
Yeah, there's not a lot to say that we didn't cover in the previous episode. But yeah, what they've done really well here is that they've not... It really doesn't feel that this was a sequel that was written for the sake of writing a sequel.
No, it doesn't seem like, we need a new Beneath the Trees. Like, what do you got, kid? Like, let's just pump anything out and put the label on it.
Like, it almost feels like, actually, this could almost be the story that he wanted to tell, and he just had to give us the prequel to get us here, right?
Potentially, yeah.
Like, that's how purposeful and interesting this story is.
Yeah, it would have been, I think, you could never do this story without doing the first story. And I know that seems like a dumb thing to say about a sequel, but I mean, in the sense of, in some ways, you could do something like this as a main... So the main kind of driving plot of this, that we have mentioned before, is that a sister of one of Sam's previous victims is out looking for her missing brother.
And it's the one victim we see her kill.
Yes. And
it's her last victim before the copycat murders start.
Yeah.
And so it's her last victim before she has to really change how she operates. And so it's kind of, we have a connection with it because we saw that murder, right?
Yeah.
And it jumps nearly a decade. It jumps 8 years. And so some of the characters have aged up, most notably her former employee who was murdered by the copycat murderer. His son is now working for her, and he's a teenager and he's smoking, and he's very cool.
Yeah, he just seems like, I mean, there's a natural... I'm very fascinated by this kind of stuff, like how you make the reader like interested or invested in a character.
Yeah.
And immediately, like, just as a template character, like bereaved son of a previous character, like that can be a very empty character model to fill in a story. But the fact that he's, you can tell, it really gets across like how he's being strong, like he's trying to continue, and then like you get that feeling before it's shown explicitly later, with it when it references back to his mother, whose husband has died and was murdered by a serial killer.
Yeah, so I really like that passage of time. I really like that it's not like a direct follow-on sequel, because I think giving us 8 years for it to have all marinated means that he could do the same thing he did in the first one, which is set a really strong scene for us. And I think if it dropped back in directly at the end of the last series, it kind of would have felt like more business as usual. And what we would have had to have gone through is watching Sam work out her new process for how she kills people, which isn't super interesting to me. What's really interesting to me is that we're being dropped back in. She's done all of that, and we get to see that. And it's like, yeah, I had to start going to different cities and, changing things around, which brought with it its own complications. And you're like, that's morbidly fascinating. Okay. But we then, we've got time for the events of the last one to have settled in a bit, and for us to now be seeing the after effects of it. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And in the sense of traditional storytelling, the Dan Harmon circle or the hero's journey, all that stuff. Part of it is they all tend to begin with a status quo. Yeah. Here's how things are, and then a disruption. Yeah. So with a sequel, you do have to have a little bit of like, right, new status quo, and then new disruption. Yeah. And with the time jump, that makes the status quo feel more like ingrained. And I've like watched and read things where it's not, when you haven't got that time jump and a new story is happening, what it can sometimes feel is contrived of like, hang on, didn't like a bunch of crazy stuff just happen, and now a new crazy stuff is happening so soon after, like, what are the odds? Yeah. And they're unrelated. Like, I recommended to you, I'm watching a show, Slow Horses, or I've just kind of caught up with that. Great show, highly recommend if anyone's thinking of checking out. But what you have there, without getting too much into that, you have a team of Department of MI5 that shouldn't really be dealing with much stuff. Yeah. But then it just so happens that they got caught up in this thing and it's all going crazy. That's almost like a couple of months in between, if that. So it's like, what are the odds that this team, who you think would have nothing to do, suddenly have a lot to do for the fourth or fifth time in this, like 2 years? Yeah. Like, so yeah, I'm saying all that to say the time jump, I think I agree with you that it's important they did it, because I think it sets the scene for this sequel in a way that if it happened like next day, you won't believe this.
It's similar to what they did, and it's completely different too, but it put me in mind of what they used to do with Archer, where between seasons there would be a huge status quo shift. And so it'd be like, we're not a spy agency anymore. Now we're in Miami.
So they didn't do that for the first couple seasons.
No,
I think
but then they did.
Yes. And then so first 4 seasons, I think, or 5, it was just all spy stuff, but also not that much big stuff. It was just like a funny show. And then 5, 6, 7, and maybe even 8 are like completely different sceneries, and they're doing different stuff, and everyone's got different roles. So yeah, no, it benefits from that. But then people are like, oh, I hate this season, but love this season. Like you start to separate people on like, what they kind of preferred.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the risk you run, isn't it? And again, this isn't a huge deviation from the original story. It is certainly a continuation thereof, but having that time in between, just like, it gives us time to get a little bit further away from that first story so that something else interesting can happen. And I think you're so right. Like, her kind of not going dormant for 8 years, because she's made it quite clear she did not go dormant for 8 years. But her having 8 years where things are sort of smooth sailing and then something else disrupts it. Like, I'm really thinking she might get caught in this season.
And that's how they get you. And again, same thing with Dexter. It was always like that tension that's always there, and to even Breaking Bad as well. The tension that's always there is when are people going to find out? When is it all going to come out and come crashing down, and that kind of thing. With this as well, one thing you notice,
doesn't Walter White largely get away with it?
Well, no, because spoilers for Breaking Bad whenever that
I've
came
not
out.
seen
But
it.
do you want me to tell you?
Yeah.
So it does all come crashing down, in the sense that everything comes out, everyone knows what he's been doing.
Yeah.
About not even midway through, near the end of the last season.
Yeah.
And then he kind of has to, without getting too much into it, he does kind of one last hurrah of a kind of thing, and then do you still want to know what happens?
Yeah.
And then he dies at the end of that. So it's like,
does the cancer get him, or does he kill himself?
He takes a bullet, saving Aaron Paul's character, Jesse.
Oh, he literally takes a bullet for Jesse.
So not like, he doesn't like jump in front, but he saves Jesse, and in the process, he gets hit with a bullet. And then, great, like, again, spoilers for bloody Breaking Bad if you haven't seen it, but it's a great bit at the end where he's really fucked over Jesse, like really badly. Like, Jesse hates him, but he's saving him because a bunch of complicated stuff. But then when he knows he's been hit and he's dying pretty soon, and the cancer's going to get him soon as well anyway, he gives Jesse, he doesn't, Jesse has a gun, and he's like, go on, like, do it, like, you should do whatever. And he's like, you really want me to do it? And he's like, yeah, I do. Like, resign to it. And he's like, do it yourself then. And then just walks off. And there's that kind of, they have that last look of like, I don't forgive you, but I don't, actively hate you anymore. Like, I'm walking away. Like, that kind of acknowledgement.
Here's the gun.
Yes. And then he gets to die in a meth lab. Like, but he's admiring like the chemistry, like the lab, like that was his life's work. It wasn't making meth, but it was chemistry.
He was a chemist. Yeah.
And he kind of dies in that, and then the police come as he's like fading out, looking at the ceiling, kind of thing. One of the best TV endings of all time, I think.
That's quite
maintain. Cool. Yeah. So one thing I was going to know, back to the comic. It was kind of our thing. It's just a little thing that I like, and I think that extra little effort. Yeah. There's a open narration by the victim's sister.
Yeah.
At the beginning, that is revealed to be a blog post.
Yeah.
And we always say, like, when it's just narration for the sake of narration, I'm like, all right, you could have got the information across better, but, and then when it's seen typed out on the computer, I'm like, that's good.
That's the other big change. And then again, that's the interesting thing. We don't really find out what year it is in the first comic, I think.
So I was going to have a look through.
Were you going to double check?
Yeah, and then I just didn't get around to it.
Because one of the things I think we both found interesting is that it was like clearly set in a pre-mobile phone world.
Yeah. So looking back, I don't know if we said this. Probably should have listened to the previous episode, but we don't have time.
That would have been really sensible, wouldn't it?
But I think I got the feeling reading the first one that it felt almost like a timeless like setting, like fun animals and the badger works in the post office, and
whereas this sequel has rooted it in a point in time. It's like the internet's now being invented.
Yeah. Now it's like. It was like that because it was 86. That's why, and now it's 94. Like that's so it's it's almost like you thought it was timeless, but actually it's not. Like,
actually, it was just the mid-'80s.
Yeah, in a rural America, which looks timeless.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, like, small town America probably still looked like the 1950s in the 1980s because, I don't know, they didn't get radio there, I suppose. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, but I think as well for us, our generation reading this, having that nostalgic of like, here's how the internet works. You can't use the phone when because you're using it for the computer and all that kind of stuff. It's like, God, that's an old time. That long time ago that was.
But it's interesting because there have been a handful of developments in America that have really expedited serial killers getting caught. And there's been a few different things. So like DNA testing becoming a thing massively changed the game for the police.
Yeah, I actually watched a very little side note. I watched the People versus O.J. Simpson, the dramatic reenactment of the trial and everything. And I remember what was interesting to me, and the point was they were like, they've got his DNA, and O.J. and his team were like, what do you mean? Like, what is DNA? And but then what you saw was really interesting is it's almost like a kind of competitive arms race between just in America generally prosecution and defense. And what you had was the prosecution like, we've got DNA, we can prove the one out of like 1 million people or like 15 million people was at that scene and it matches them. Like that's so they were like, crime's a thing of the past now, like we've got DNA, like this is a lid on it. And then you saw then the defense pioneering, which would then become like all defense would use after this was like, so hang on, who handled this DNA testing?
Yeah.
Like, so it became like, we've got this. Well, we've got this now. It's like, well, we've done this to prove like it's that competing.
The escalating arm race.
Like security and burglars. Like that kind of, So it was interesting from that point of view.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, so there's like a handful of like advancements that have been made.
I think cameras and stuff as well. Like Sam talks about that with the cities.
Yeah, so CCTV cameras was a big one. Which Sam goes into. DNA testing was a big one. The internet was huge because suddenly, with electronic communication between police forces, exchanging information between police departments took minutes, not days.
Yeah.
Right? And so one of the things that the kind of pseudo-protagonist, I suppose, of this one...
Anti-hero, and even that's like protagonist in the traditional sense, yeah.
I think of the protagonist here as being the sister.
Yeah, it's hard to say because, like, it's normally just whose perspective you're from, and the first issue is entirely from the sisters, and then the second is Sam's, and then the third is the sisters again. So I guess it's almost is co-protagonists or dual protagonists.
Yeah, but... Well, yeah, exactly. But one of the things that she is doing is actively going around all of these police forces, asking them if they have any information.
Yeah.
And the other tool that she's using is about to make that redundant. But that's why, like, she's scary for people like Sam, because most people wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And then, do you know the other huge development has been publicly available, like, commercial gene testing?
Oh, yeah. It's caught, like, a bunch of old school serial killers.
Yeah, and because like one of their like nieces or nephews or a grandchild or something will have their genome tested.
Yeah, I think they got Golden State Killer.
They did. Yeah, they did. Yeah, it was his nephew. His nephew got his genome tested, and they were like, your DNA
partial match.
Yeah, your DNA is a partial match to this serial killer. And he's like, well, I wasn't born at the time. And they're like, yeah, but your uncle was.
Who's your family?
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because like sometimes one of these serial killers will like stop killing for a bit.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, they've gone dormant, which either means they're dead or they're probably in prison for something.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, do we spend our time trying to work out who it is anymore? Or are we just happy that we got them for something else and we crack on?
Do you want to hear the funniest old serial killer getting caught years later?
Go on, then.
There was a guy called, what was it, BTK, I think, which stands for Bind, Torture, Kill, I think. Did some absolutely horrible stuff. Don't look it up if you're, have a slight, what's the word, disposition. Don't look up if you don't want to know that
If you've got a squeamish disposition.
Yeah. But he, years later, I think he became active again and got in contact, like he set like a Zodiac style, not like a decode thing, but he just wrote to the newspaper, whatever, and the newspaper passed on to the FBI. And he was in some kind of contact. At one point, he was like, I want to send you more stuff. If I put it on a blank floppy disk, can you trace me from that? And the FBI were like,
Nope.
no. And he sent it. And they were like, right, so we've found a logo for a church in this state, in this city, and just caught him.
Yeah, wasn't it like it was like a school or something that somebody worked at, and then it was like the serial numbers were bought in a block by somebody.
Not even that. I think it was just like he took a floppy disk from there that if you plug into any computer, same with external hard drives and stuff now, you look at it on a computer, it says it's empty, and you might think, oh, there's nothing on it, but they don't work like that. Like, you don't delete stuff off it.
You overwrite it.
Yeah, exactly. So if stuff hasn't been overwritten, even if it says there's nothing on here, but there's memory of it, and that's why, like, forensic tech people can find it. And they were just like, yeah, we've got this, and managed to catch him really quickly. But I just love that, like, promise me you can't catch me. If I do this... promise me that it won't come back on me. They're like, yeah, absolutely.
I
you
also
can trust
like
us.
the ones that communicate with like the media or the police. It's like, A, that's super fucked up. B, it's super dumb.
Yeah, it's delusions of grandeur. Like, there's a surprising amount of people who aspiring serial killers who never actually get to. They never get to 2 or 3, whatever the measuring thing is, to classification is, because they do one with the idea of being, I'm so smart, I can commit a murder and get away with it.
Yeah.
Like, they have that intention going into it, and they just get caught after one. But you, like, they obviously had that mindset where if they had got away with it, they would have kept doing it. So there's that delusion of grandeur that comes with that kind of psychopathy.
God, it's so fucked up, isn't it?
We probably should have included if anyone listened to last week's episode, the quite solemn discussion about glorification of real life serial killers that we did last week.
Well, yeah. So did we do this in spooky season last year?
No, we did it in May of 2024.
So we did this in May. So this was over a year ago. Well over a year ago.
Yes.
Sorry.
Would have been good spooky season fodder had we planned it.
Ryan's just showed me the title for the previous episode, by the way, which is Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. Winnie the Pooh is a serial killer, ... but good.
And do you know why I've specified that?
Why?
It's because Winnie the Pooh's copyright ran out, and someone made a really awful, and by awful I don't mean an awful horror film, not like bloody or disgusting. I mean like a bad quality horror film.
Yeah.
And they made it literally like in the run up to being released immediately after the copyright expired.
Yes, I remember this. I remember we talked about it.
Yeah. And I think this is genuinely a much better version of that kind of thing.
So I think we're both in agreement that this is a very good representation of the sort of serial killer genre.
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah.
And I think, I don't remember where we stood on this a year and a half ago, but how do you feel about this type of fiction at this point?
I mean, I enjoy it. Like, I'm a consumer of it. And again, like, it's like we said last week, like, the concept of serial killers is endlessly fascinating to a large part of society because they are the modern day monsters. I think in the same way that back in however long ago you want to go, there were vampires and demons and werewolves, like that people just believed because there were things that happened and there was always something in the darkness they didn't know was there. And now the modern version of that is people that are monsters. And the scariest thing about serial killer, like most people who are murdered by a loved one or someone you know. Like that's statistically, if you're married and you're murdered, it was probably the spouse, like almost certainly. But what we have is a fear of, it's almost like, well, if I get killed by someone I know, like, that's on me. But it's the fear of, like, being picked anonymously by someone and never knowing, who it was afterwards. It's that kind of thing. So I get why it's popular. And I myself enjoy the fictionalized version of it. It's my issues come with, elevating real life serial killers and monsters to be, like, smarter and more insidious than they actually were,
Yeah, I mean the sort of not hero worship, but the turning of Jeffrey Dahmer into an icon recently, I think is a bit fucked up.
I think it kind of started with the Ted Bundy trial.
Yes.
He went to trial, represented himself, so immediately, he's a fucking idiot. But he was handsome. And that was, at least even then, I mean, he was played by Zac Efron in the film.
Is Ted Bundy that handsome? 1 minute, I'm just going to Google Ted Bundy.
I think he was real life handsome, not Hollywood handsome, if that makes sense.
Right.
He wasn't like a Henry Cavill, but I mean, he was in real life. People were like, yeah, he's pretty good looking, like that. But I think that was what kind of opened people's eyes to the fascination, to the point where women were writing him letters in prison and stuff, knowing what he was accused of, and even after he got convicted of it.
Yeah, that's fucking wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I don't think he's particularly handsome, but he's also not ugly.
No. And also this was for whatever decade it was. Was it 70s or 80s?
People were less handsome back then, weren't they?
Yeah, exactly. In all facets of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think with this, what is different to this, to like, again, I've talked about, I'm a big Dexter fan. I've watched that entire show. And the Hannibal TV series and, a lot of this kind of stuff. And normally I'm pretty unfazed by stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like I can consume whatever. Somehow this of all things, this sequel opens with the same thing from the first season that actually affects me for some reason.
Her killing the duck.
Yeah, and it's what it is. And again, I'm hoping not to like impart my fear and anxieties from this into the listener, but it is that concept of he just helps a person who seemingly she has the cast on like a fucking coward, like Ted Bundy used to do, and can you help me with this? Load this into my car, and then chloroform them.
Yeah,
that idea of like, and again, Sam in this makes a specific purpose, being like they don't feel any pain, and I maintain we had a disagreement, a respectful disagreement about this. I maintain that the reason that she's written like that is to make her more agreeable to the reader as a protagonist.
Yes.
Because if she was someone who, and I'm actually making a video that touches on this point in YouTube video about Dexter.
Weren't you working on that when we last spoke about this?
Yeah, it takes ages. It takes me ages. But it is almost finished. It'll hopefully be out before this episode comes out. So it might be out now when you listen.
Oh, awesome.
But it's about presenting serial killers as protagonists and what specific things you need to do to
make them likable.
And I think one of the things here is that she's like, I sedate them and they never feel a thing.
Yeah.
And it's written as for her convenience.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not here to inflict pain. Like, I just want to kill someone. So if they're unconscious and they don't feel anything, that's easier for me to do. But I think it is specifically written that way to also, because if she was torturing people or victims, I don't think we would be as on board to follow her story from her perspective. I mean, than if she didn't.
A really great example, you could almost say, Ryan, it's a prime example of that.
It is the prime example, I would say.
Is Patrick Bateman.
Yeah, because he's enjoying inflicting pain and terror on people.
Yeah, so there's that scene where he lures one of the other finance bros back to his apartment, and there's newspaper and plastic sheets everywhere, and he puts on Doogie Howser.
No, it's Christ, what is it? It's Jerry and the Somethings, I think. The music.
It's some pop music.
Yeah.
It's some pop music from the 1980s. And he puts that on, and then he's got the axe that looks blunt as well. Yeah, Doogie Howser's from a film. No, Doogie Howser's
is Neil Patrick Harris's character from
it's
MD.
It's oh my god, what is it?
Huey Lewis and the News. And the only reason I had that in my head that I wanted to try and pull out of my memory is because there was a parody video of that scene, and it was Huey Lewis as the Patrick Bateman character, and the Jared Leto business partner character was Weird Al Yankovic. But it's Huey Lewis is talking about the film American Psycho. It's like Christian Bale plays Patrick Bateman, who was a serial killer hiding in disguise, and Weird Al's just like drunk in the seat, like, what? And eventually Huey Lewis just kills him.
But it's like, he looks up and he goes, is that an axe? And Patrick Bateman has a huge grin on his face. He's like, yes, it is. And then he absolutely goes to town on him. And it's like, Patrick Bateman is maybe one of the least likable characters I've ever seen. Whereas it's because, one of the things that we don't like about serial killers, or at least the concept of murder, I think, is how unhinged it all is. Yeah. Whereas, I've come around to your way of thinking. I think the method makes it more palatable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like not even that there is not even the specific method that she chooses, but the fact that there is a method.
Yeah. And I think there's so many little things that we don't even think about which make this successful. I mean, Dexter, the big thing, the selling point of the entire character is that
kills
he's
killers, right?
a serial killer who kills killers. So immediately there's that idea of like, well, I don't like it, but if you're going to kill someone, but even then they play with it where he doesn't have that same righteous, he's not like a righteous, like I'm killing wicked people like that. He's more like, I need to kill someone. And I've been given the code, which means if I kill these kind of people, that I can get away with it. Because who's most likely to disappear? Someone who is either killed previously or is currently being accused of murder. Like, so those are the people. It's like, if they go messing, well, they just left because, for obviously. So, and then even when in the series, his bodies get discovered and they pursue him without obviously knowing who it is, but he gets called the Bay Harbor Butcher. Like, that's his name, or the name the newspapers give him. Even then, you've got some people who are like, yeah, well, who cares? He's killing killers. So
isn't he a blood splatter expert as well? So he works in the police.
Yes, forensics. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, and his dad was a cop, so he's like, here's how to not get caught and all that.
Oh, did his dad like help him?
Yeah. So we're veering off again, but it's all serial killer related.
I've watched a bit of Dexter.
Yeah, I've seen all of it. The Dexter Resurrection just came out recently.
You really like
great,
it, don't you?
Great show. And the dad is he knows what could have caused it or what did cause it very early on, and you only find out like later in the season. But as a kid, he discovers like, hey, I see you like killed small animals and stuff. Like, have you ever wanted to kill anyone else or whatever? And he's like, no, because you and mum would be mad. Not like because it'd be bad or I don't want to kill people. But he still has that kind of like, you notice the difference where someone who's got, and it's a very fictionalized, elevated version
of morality.
Well, not even that, but more like someone who has a uncontrollable bloodlust, a bloodlust that will grow, but it's also in a loving, functional family.
Yeah.
And especially with his dad, who sees these early signs, and is also a police officer who is routinely seeing killers get away and fall through the justice system cracks, get away with like clerical errors or like a warrant wasn't properly signed or stuff like that.
Yeah.
So eventually he's like, you know what, I'm going to train this kid to kill killers. Like, I've had enough of them. And I think it's a really Dexter. And the other character who I talk about in the video, who I might controversially label a serial killer, is the Punisher from the Marvel.
Yeah.
And he has a sympathetic backstory and a reason why he's doing it. And they're both morality, like characters that inspire questions of morality. Like, that's what they are really. But anyone who's like, yeah, I love Dexter, I wish I could kill killers, like, you've missed the point entirely.
You've thoroughly missed the point.
And
of
the same with police officers in a lot of Western countries, mainly America, who have the Punisher symbol on their guns and stuff. It's like, you really have missed the mark on like what Punisher is about. Yeah. To the point where in one of the recent Punisher comics, they're to have him running into those police and the Punisher being like, you're a fucking idiot. Like, I'm a psycho who needs to do this. You are. Is
it becoming so? Do cops roll around America with the Punisher's logo on their
Some
guns?
do. The worst ones, arguably.
Yeah.
So that's the fascination with the fictionalized serial killer stuff.
Well, I think that's sort of, it cuts down to what's really interesting about this, because in the first one we kind of see Sam's method.
Yeah.
In this one we see her develop her method. And then we also see what I think are probably the two most brutal murders in the entire series, which is when she's a bit younger, she starts working in her parents' hardware store.
And spoilers for this comic, if you do want to listen, you haven't read, but you decide later, we're only covering the first 3 issues. There's 3 more issues coming out, so you can read those unspoiled.
Her parents are going on holiday in Florida, and they're leaving her in charge of the shop. They're not leaving her in charge of the shop.
And she's just annoyed that she's still living with them and can't, move out herself or whatever. Because at one point she's holding earrings that she's literally taken as a trophy. Yeah. And her mum's like, oh, you think about getting your ears pierced? Like, that's where she is at this point.
Yeah, she's just started. So she started working in the shop. She's bought her first car, which means that she can go to the city and murder people.
Yep.
But she doesn't have enough freedom from her parents to do that consistently. And so she waits until they are going off on holiday and fucking kills them both. And then tells everyone that they retired to Florida.
And specifically cooks them a nice meal, which turns out is loaded with cyanide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
She does them the same, pretty much in a very similar way to the way that she did Nigel.
Yes, yeah.
Poison, which is not her thing.
No.
And she sort of says that, you know, everyone she'd killed up until that point was sort of like, you know, getting her ready to off her parents. And that is the point where I think she really moves over to being a brutal character. Because, you know, as you've kind of rightly said, nobody that she killed before suffered any pain. Like, they're doing everything they can to make her still a viable protagonist, even though she's a serial killer. And then she kills her own fucking parents. And it's like, fuck, that is brutal.
This character is, I think, like a real testing the limits of what a protagonist can do in a similar way to Patrick Bateman. Because I think as fascinated as people were with like the evil shit, horrible shit that Patrick Bateman was doing in the film, there's also then the twist at the end of spoilers for film whenever the fuck that came out. Did any of it even happen?
Yeah,
and
totally.
then you get a kind of like, oh, how do I feel about this person? Like, should I be sympathetic that they're just clearly insane, but for all we know, hasn't hurt anyone?
Yeah.
Like, so in this, Sam is also, I think we have a fascination in modern Western culture, whatever. We have a fascination with, and maybe this has probably existed for years and decades and hundreds of years. We have a fascination with people who are very competent at things. People who are very good, not just good naturally, but like think about, put thought and work that stuff. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's an element here of like how clinical she is, how much thought she puts in. Like we almost have, and especially with like illegal stuff, like how many people are fascinated with like drug dealers who manage to get drugs across the border for decades, or, you know, like that hitmen who are like really like cold killers, but they're also like smart and don't get caught and that kind of stuff. I think we have a fascination with that. And I think maybe that's, despite her brutality, it's almost like we can't help but admire like your gusto at the very least. Like you got spunk, kid. Like they say in America.
And she's, you know, she's incredibly effective at what she does.
Yeah.
But
she's not just naturally, she's not like, oh, I'm really good at this. Like you can tell she's like worked at it. And I think we have a kind of appreciation of that in a really morbid way.
Hustle culture, man.
Yeah, she's hustled.
We live in the era of hustle culture.
Rise and grind.
Right, yeah, well, but isn't that so symptomatic? Because that is the rhetoric of our generation. Our generation is like, we are living through economic decline and war and the rise of fascism for the third time, but rise and grind.
Yeah.
Like fucking people love Andrew Tate. And
arseholes do.
But people like him.
Yeah.
There is a subset of young men who hang on the man's every word. And yeah, I think we have a morbid fascination with people. We have an interest in people who work hard and succeed in capitalism. And I think you're right, it doesn't necessarily matter what they're succeeding at.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, I mean, again, that's the whole connection of American Psycho back in the day. It's why he was like a, you know, successful banker or whatever the fuck he did. But yeah, with this, I think, again, the story beats. There's a little more I can say about the story, but I think there's a more interesting area we can go after that.
Yeah.
But the other story beat is it's the reveal at the end of the first issue. So all through the first issue, we are seeing Luke, I think was the victim's name.
Yeah.
I might have got that wrong, but the Duck's sister, and seeing the world that she's in this almost kind of like grief-induced Arrested Development.
Yes.
But it's grief without, what's the word? Closure.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, again, she's not lost a loved one, but a loved one's gone missing. And that's it's almost like grief in perpetual grief, like in limbo.
She makes a conscious decision that the death of her brother is going to consume her entire life. So she moves to the city.
The missing brother, because she doesn't even know he's dead.
Yeah. So she moves to the city that he lived in. And after a couple of weeks, she gets a job just to pay some rent. And now she's a manager there. But it means that she can continue. It's a print shop.
Yeah.
So it means that she can keep printing for a decade these missing flyers. And she's on every list so that whenever a body of a duck turns up, she is one of the first people. Whenever they get a duck John Doe, she's one of the first people who goes to look at it.
Yeah.
And she has essentially made it her life's goal to track her brother down.
She's intentionally pushing away everyone. There's other people at print shop like, we're going to karaoke. She's like, no. And then it's like, oh, you're busy. She's like, no, I just don't want to go. Like,
because you make friends.
Yeah, and you move on.
Yeah.
And she's actively stopping herself from moving on. And I think seeing her in that state is just like, again, such a brave way to start this second series. Really brave as well, because it puts Sam in even worse light. Because it's one thing when you're following a serial killer and they're just killing people who you spend no time with.
Yeah.
It's another thing when it's like, and here's the victims' families and how devastated they are by the actions of the protagonist. Like
totally.
And I think it's a really interesting, bold place for this series to go.
Yeah, 100%.
And then,
bold is the word. It's so bold, isn't it?
And then, and again, and the victim's sister being such a interesting character, like immediately sympathizing with her, even though she's like all the things that would be a character would not be likable. She's standoffish, she's closed off, she's kind of off with everyone around her, but she's got a purpose and she's being really good at it. But like, again, very competent. She talked about how she visits 2 or 3 police stations a week, going or literally around all the ones in the city, and she's only now just come back to the first one again. And how she's on the nump call list of all the morgues and whatever in case a body turns up. Like, she's doing it. She's as closed off from society as a hidden serial killer. Almost the opposite, because a serial killer like Sam is like, I've got friends and family and I've got this cover and everyone thinks I'm great.
She's maintaining a fairly respectable life.
Yeah, whereas the victim's sister has literally ostracized herself from society in a very obvious way. And it's the weird dichotomy of both these characters, these co-protagonists, and they're almost opposites but the same in a lot of ways as well. So all that stuff I think is really interesting and works really well. And then she gets a message from someone being like, hey, you should check out, I think it's called Woodbury, I think, or something like Woodbridge, this town. And she looks up and there was a serial killer who was killing a bunch of people. So she's like, that, makes sense. And then Sam sees her come into the town.
Well, no, she doesn't. She just goes on a hunch, and then she gets there, and she kind of... It's at that point that she starts looking into it, and she goes to the library, and she was like, can I have everything you have on? And the librarian goes, the murders.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah. She's like, okay, here you go. Here's... and it's that old school tech they had to view newspapers, isn't it?
Yeah, the twisty thing where it microfilm and it comes up on a little projector kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's at that point that she finds out about...
Well, I think it's just before that we get Sam contacting her, approaching her in real life and being like, I'm the one who messaged you. And that reveal, because I was fully on board, I think intentionally, a misdirect for the readers. We were like, who's contacted her? Does someone know about Sam and is telling the victim's sister to get try and expose or whatever? And then it's just at the end of the first issue, it's Sam's like, oh, like someone's looking out for their victim. And I think the reason to do that, it's a really subtle clue where we have this almost B plot of a bear. A bear is in, not an anthropomorphic bear, a real bear, like a full-on bear.
That subplot.
And there people like, oh, there's bears coming into the town.
Yeah.
And someone remarks like, yeah, because their normal hunting ground is being overrun by shops. There's there's a parody Walmart that is being opened up. And they're like, yeah, that's where they would eat and
development,
hunt,
isn't it? Yeah.
And now they're naturally moving into where the food is. I think that is the kind of subtle reasoning of Sam, I think, is having an epiphany of like, because she said, like you said earlier, she's like, I have to go to different cities and I have to be careful and stake them out, make sure I don't get killed, whatever. And then she thinks later, like, what if people just came to me? Yeah. And I think we're seeing the beginning of like a new process for her where she's like, normally she avoided killing in her town because she didn't want to kill, obviously, people who live near her. Now she's like, what if I can bring people to me? And I think that...
And then make them disappear, and then everybody will just go, oh, that person clearly left.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's like a really dark, interesting, morbidly interesting like direction we're now going in. Again, I didn't expect Sam to be the one to be meshing this person.
No.
I think it's going to make for a really interesting like cat and mouse dynamic. Like,
normally... We've got 3 issues left of this, haven't we?
Exactly. Normally it's serial killer and cop is like normally like the cat and mouse of it all.
Yeah.
This is serial killer and victim's family member, which I think is even more interesting. So to get that, and also there's a turtle with, was it agoraphobia? Or developing agoraphobia. But that kind of ties into, I think, the larger themes, which I was excited to talk to you about. There's a lot of bigger themes in this about like encroaching capitalism and the early days of the internet where they were originally presented as connecting everyone, but actually we're seeing one character, the turtle character, he's like, oh, because the internet, I can just work from home. I repair motherboards or whatever, and I just send them to whoever. It's like, I could do it all online. I don't even have to leave the house barely. And then someone's like, you might want to be careful there. Like, you should get out of the house once or twice. But we're seeing that early isolation of people with the thing that we thought was going to connect people, but who is connecting serial killers to their potential victims.
Yeah, 100%.
I think there's some really big kind of like meaning, what's the word? Like metaphor, meaning?
Yeah.
Like,
and I think, the early internet was a pretty dangerous place. Like, you know.
I mean, anyone who was on Habbo Hotel when they were underage will tell you.
Well, right? You speak to most Gen Z people. If you speak to somebody from Gen Z, they will have a story about either themselves or one of their friends getting groomed on Club Penguin.
Yeah. And now it's happening with Roblox is the latest story.
Massively.
Yeah.
Hugely. Right, like Roblox is terrifying. Because most of those games are like user created as well, so you don't know what's baked into them.
Well, it's such an unregulated area that you are just like, what are you doing about it? Like,
yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it is really showing us the world changing, and again, it feeds into it giving us an 8-year time gap.
Yeah, like
it really can show the ever changing world, and it shows that one message could be Sam's undoing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the first time she's ever left a paper trail.
I think she's kind of getting frustrated with the extra precautions she needs to take because of the rising, but she's also, the same things that are making her normal process more difficult are now potentially giving her a new avenue to go and a more convenient one.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of, it's the changing landscape of the, society and the internet. And almost like serial killing is more difficult in this way, but it's more easier this way. But it's also, it affects the entire town. And I think where we are now in society and life and stuff, we're looking at this stuff as like almost the precursors of like, I don't want to be as dramatic as to say the fall of Western civilization.
But it is.
Well, it's like, it's the downtrend that I think a lot of people would say. What's the joke about, someone said in the film The Matrix, they created the Matrix. The robots created the Matrix as like the perfect society for people to live in and not know they were in a simulation or whatever. And they chose like 1999. And like at the time, like, why are you choosing like this time that the movie is releasing in, whatever? It's like now 20 plus years later, we're like, that was the best time. Like, that was a really good time.
The 90s was sick.
End of the 90s, like we'd had all the 90s stuff. Like Millennium hadn't happened yet. Like it was a sweet time in retrospect.
The Twin Towers were still there.
Exactly. And I think from us, like where we are now, we're kind of looking at this stuff being like, that stuff's going to get a lot worse in a couple decades. But we're seeing like and again, it's not just the internet, it's the over capitalization of the excessive capitalism of like these big discount stores that put all the mom and pop shops out of business.
I mean, it's like, I think one of the things that I noticed a few years ago, and again, it was because I went to a lot of like provincial British towns for work. I won't explain what I was up to, but I had a job that meant
definitely not serial killer.
Definitely not a serial killer.
Because you would have been going to the seas.
Yeah, exactly. But I ended up going to like a lot of kind of middling towns that you would never visit as a tourist. Like the kind of places that you would only go to if you were visiting your parents who you were from there kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they were all the same. Like they all had the same shit in them. The only thing that was kind of vaguely exciting about any of them is that some of them had a different American chain restaurant that I hadn't been to before.
And
so
you've never heard of it before, but you heard the name and you immediately knew it was Americans. It was something like Zippy's or something like that.
So I think
Zippy's Diner.
In a year, I got to try Jollibee, Taco Bell before that was a big thing in the UK. Jollibee, Taco Bell, Chick-fil-A and Wingstop. All before they had arrived in the city I was in, because
they trial them in an area, don't they?
Yeah, they trial them in these small towns.
Let's not get the expensive London or Manchester spot. Let's get a cheap one and just see if British people like it at all, and then we'll grow.
One of the first Taco Bells in the UK was in Great Yarmouth.
Yeah.
Great Yarmouth was deemed to be a fantastic test market for highly affordable shit food, and then they did that, deemed that it went quite well, and then they stuck one in Chelmsford and one in Norwich. It was like, that's how they do it. And so I was going to these places, and 30 or 40 years ago, it would have been really exciting because there'd have been a ton of little businesses. Even 30 years ago in the 90s, it would have been really interesting because there'd have been a ton of little independent businesses that I could have visited, and you could have just walked up the high street and been like, oh wow, their bookshop's really lovely. Look how interesting this really old hardware store is. But it was just the same chains. It was the same 7 chains, and then number 8 and 9 would sometimes be a different chain that you hadn't seen before. And it's sort of the sort of amalgamation of culture. Like, culture just becomes one big squishy blob. Yeah, kind of. And that process really started in like a big way in the 90s, didn't it?
Oh, it's this. I think that is the kind of undercurrent plot of what's happening here. Again, well, am I using the right words for it in terms of like talking about fiction? Like, it's not like the overt plot, but it's the meaning and messaging.
It's like a subplot, yeah.
Yeah. There must be another word for that, isn't there? Because subplot, I always think is like B-plot. Like, again, with the bear in town. Like,
but I would argue that
does subplot literally mean like, what is the dual meaning of all this? What is the messaging?
Well, a subplot is just a secondary plot.
So
right?
a B plot.
Yeah, but it could be a C plot. Like, you can have multiple subplots going.
Yeah, as I should say, I don't think of this stuff as a plot. Like, I don't, like, isn't the introduction of the internet is almost like a C plot?
But it is a subplot.
Yeah, but like, I think by the larger thing of, like, again, growing globalization of capitalism, stuff like that.
I would call that a subplot.
Okay.
Like, I remember one of my favorite books that I've ever read is Goodbye to Berlin by Christopher Isherwood. Christopher Isherwood was an English guy who taught English in Germany in the 1920s and the 1930s.
The swinging 20s.
Well, yeah, the Weimar years.
Yeah.
The Weimar years.
Things are going to be great forever.
Yeah, so the Weimar years were really fun and interesting in Germany. Very queer.
Yeah, very cosmopolitan. Very not avant-garde.
Very queer.
Yeah.
Like, there was a really strong queer subculture in most German cities in the 1920s. And one of the subplots is like the insidious rise of Nazism throughout the book. It's not a plot. It's not like a thing that is like characters are actively doing. It's like,
but it's happening in the background.
Yeah, like, you know, one character will be talking to another and they'll be like, oh, fuck, I'm going to be late to work because the fucking Nazis are having a parade or whatever. And you're like, oh, I know what that's going to be. And that's the same thing here. It's like, oh, they're building a big mall, which means that this patch of woodland that Sam used to like go and killing in isn't there anymore.
And Sam's own shop is at risk, because if it's a Walmart, they're going to have a hardware section.
Well, and this is it, isn't it? Sort of.
She's definitely going to work at Walmart, I reckon. That'll be the end of the series.
But globalization.
A fate worse than death.
But globalization, to a certain degree, has been the death of the small town. Like, small towns they either get swallowed up by it, and it just ends up being a bunch of chains, which everybody works in, but nobody can own their own business. Nobody can really achieve anything there.
First it was Walmart, and then it was Amazon. Like, that's the thing. Because then you had Walmart being like, oh, bloody Amazon. Like, no one wants to go into shops anymore. It's like, my brother in Christ, you were the one who started this trend.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? But yeah, like, small towns either become horrible, boring places where nobody can achieve anything because the only things that exist there are chains, and you can't compete and pay the rent to run or start a business, or they stay quaint, but all people want to do is tourist stuff.
Yeah,
and they're empty for half the year and they're shut for half the year. Like, have you ever, like, for one reason or another, there was a seaside town in Norfolk that I was spending a lot of time in a few years ago, and it was great in the summer. In the summer, there was always something going on. There was always something fun to do.
A lot of rich people come over from where we are in England. There's a lot of wealthy, not even like rich, but, you know, like well-off people who are like, let's summer in Norfolk for for the summer.
But then
let's summer for the summer.
But Norfolk. Then you'd hit September, and suddenly there'd be ghost towns. And that's the thing. Like, small towns are either they just become like vapid places that have been rolled over by globalism, or they're tourist traps, or they just don't exist anymore, and they become places where people live but not where they exist.
Or they're only existing.
Well, no, it's like they live there, they sleep there, it's where their home is, but everything else is done elsewhere. They socialize elsewhere, they spend their time elsewhere, they work elsewhere. Nobody like there's a difference between people living somewhere and people like living in a place, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I fully think that this is a story about kind of the world changing due to globalism, and that's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. What I meant before was, what would you call it? And again, fair enough if you don't know, because I don't know either. What would you call it? Like, was it with Moby Dick, where like the undercurrent is about revenge, like that kind of stuff, or like man versus nature? Like, what do you call those Are they the metaphors? Are they the meanings?
Well,
because they're not like subplots, like they're not happening in the story, but
Yeah.
they are like the dual meaning of what's
I suppose
happening.
things can exist as a metaphor for something.
Yeah.
You kind of say that the symbolism running through.
The symbolism, I think, is because then what's happening in this story, is the symbolism of like almost the decline of Western culture. She's like, an active serial killer before this stuff even happens. I suppose it's more of the symbolism of just how every aspect of society is affected, like the good and the bad.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like, extra security and security cameras sucks, but you caught the serial killers.
It's harder to be a serial killer.
There is an interesting theory that the rise, because the 70s is kind of known as like
the era
of serial killers. There's a theory, and I don't know if this is proven or not, or debunked or whatever, but it might be like the exposure to lead for children in the late 50s and 60s.
I've heard this.
Maybe that's what's caused it, and that's why we don't have it now.
Sent a bunch of them fucking mad.
Yeah, I think
because it was quite, the concept of a serial killer is relatively uniquely American. You do get people who want to kill multiple people everywhere in the world, but America has way more of them, always has done.
Yeah, I think what I've seen about that is maybe it's more in America because there's literally a bigger landmass, so you hear about more American ones. I think in every other big landmass where the same thing would apply, what you've got is a lot of corrupt dictatorships brushing stuff under the rug, in the sense that there's like, I think one example of one in Russia where they were like, that nothing bad happens under the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
It's like, but you had one person kill a bunch of people, and like, you've taken care of them, but what do we tell people about it? Like, nah, it's fine, it didn't happen. So China to an extent as well. So I think we don't know if it is more prominent in America, or if it's just America's the kind of place where they get caught and publicized, and the news media obviously talks about them.
That's a really nuanced opinion that I'd never considered, but you're probably right, actually.
Yeah, and again, I saw this just from looking into this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
My point being, there's some fucked up people in the world, and better look out. That's
fuck. That's not the message I want people. Right. Tell you what, we can have a conversation with our
resident historical expert.
Yeah. So he messaged me, and I must admit, I argued the toss with him.
Right.
So he said, right, as your historical consultant, I'm coming at you about bows versus crossbows. So in last week's episode,
the important stuff.
Yeah, in last week's episode, I said that crossbows aren't more effective than bows. A bow is a more effective weapon. Basically, he said that, man, we were both arguing the same point, but I think it's important that I put
get
in this
across your
retraction.
point first.
No, that I put in this retraction. So I basically said that bows are way more effective. Crossbows just came out afterwards, and people think they're an upgrade. What he said is, you are right that a longbow is way more powerful than most crossbows, but to train a longbowman, you have to start when they're a child.
Yeah,
and
they
they
have
won't
to be really strong.
Well, yeah, you start training them as children, and then they're, by the time they're like 18, they're ready, and so you have a very finite pool, and it takes quite a skilled artisan to make a good longbow and to fletch arrows for it. And he's like, crossbows aren't as powerful, and they take much longer to reload, but you can also train somebody to use one in a matter of days, not years.
Yeah.
And he said because they were largely mass produced, even though they're more expensive to produce than a bow, they're much easier.
Yeah.
And so his argument is that whilst I was very much right, that you can reload a bow much faster, and in the right hands, a bow is a much more effective, powerful weapon, a crossbow had certain benefits which kind of meant that it proliferated.
Yeah.
The way he described it is that a longbow was a sniper rifle, a crossbow is an AK-47.
Yes. And yeah, that's fair enough, yeah. We also got a comment on YouTube, which we don't say barely any of the YouTube comments, but it was an interesting one enough that I thought was worth mentioning. But it was from one Alex Prime FX on one of the Ultimate X-Men episodes. But they were just talking about, I was talking about like the blurbs in Marvel, like when they put like just a page blurb.
God.
Like, here's what happened.
How old is this episode?
I don't have that immediately in front of me, so I can't be asked to look it up. But All they got into was that instead of blurbs, what Marvel did, they used to, back in the day, and we've seen this in the old kind of 60s era, it used to be like, gee, fighting Venom last week was really crazy, but now everything's back to normal, and I'm swinging through the streets and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then they would spend like 3 pages of an issue recapping the last issue every time. And apparently they credit Brian Michael Bendis with the Ultimate Spider-Man from the early 2000s, where he was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do a 1-page blurb. Like, here's what happened. Let's go on with the story kind of thing. And they also said they like the show. So, they also obviously someone...
Are they suggesting that... So they're suggesting the blurbing started in the 2000s?
No, the single-page blurb, yes. Yeah.
I mean, that's cool. I didn't know that. We should probably have a look at some pre-2000s Marvel and see if that is the case.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at... what's the... We haven't really done much 90s stuff. I suppose it's mostly been 80s stuff.
Which is weird, because we're from the 90s.
Yeah, but I think comics did kind of have a peak in the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, we think about all that came out. The Watchmen, Dark Knight Returns, the Daredevil
Killing
stuff.
Joke.
Yeah, Killing Joke, exactly. So then I think the 90s almost suffered under the weight of the quality of the 80s. We're like, what have you got now? It's like Batman with lots of spikes on him. Superman's in a black suit.
Yeah.
Aquaman is missing a hand. He's got a hook instead. Like,
yeah, no, it makes sense.
So yeah, I think it took the 2000s for them to be like, we need to start doing stuff differently. The blurb.
Have we got any more really funny comments? Have a little scroll through. I'll see if there's any I like.
I mean, someone just commented on a short from a while ago about Fisto the robot from the Fallout series, just saying name's Fisto lol. So that's as good as they get.
And then somebody said, gosh, I've forgotten that Colin was Bullseye first. Quite the evolution going from his work as Bullseye to the Penguin.
And
double thumbs up.
Quite the work, actually, because Bullseye, he was just chewing scenery, and then Penguin, I think that was like an
chewing
Oscar...
scenery?
Yeah, have you not heard that term before?
No, getting beaten up.
No, it's chewing scenery is just like, is overacting. Like, it's intentionally. Prime examples of it.
Yeah.
Raul Julia in Street Fighter, where he played M. Bison. Which, if you haven't seen it, Street Fighter is referred to as one of the worst films ever made.
Yeah.
But Raul Julia is amazing in it.
Right, okay.
I can't remember his name, older British actor, but he was in one of the original Dungeons & Dragons films, and he plays like an evil wizard. And again, awful film, but he's like, release the dragons, or like that kind of like, oh, have my revenge, like that kind of stuff.
So he's chewing scenery doing a really good performance in a shit film?
And not even a good performance, an intentionally over-the-top performance.
Right, okay.
But chewing scenery implies you're enjoying it. It's not like you're doing it because you thought that was the best thing to do. It's specifically, it's like, I'm in a shit film, but I'm going to have fun.
Yeah, having a bit of a laugh.
And that makes the performance better.
Yeah, great.
And still playing it straight. Like, it's not like you're not doing your job seriously, but you're like, if I just do like a subtle, restrained, like, approach to this role,
what's
like,
the fucking
it's
point?
just all going to be bad anyway.
Yeah.
I might as well go balls to the wall, and at least people will be like, this is a shit film. But I really like them.
But fucking Colin was great.
I tell you, the best, I mean, I don't think he would describe himself as a scenery chewer, but I think he's got a lot of prime examples of it. I think it's Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd ever refer to it as I don't think he'd ever refer to it as scene chewing. I think he'd be like, no, that was what I thought was the best thing to do.
No, I totally thought that was the way to play this.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we've gone a little long. We've fulfilled our contractual obligations. Maybe we'll take out that bit earlier about assassinations. See how you feel afterwards.
So thank you so much for listening. Ryan is going to see you out with some stuff. Bye.
Bye. And thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, then please subscribe to get notified of our future episodes as well. And if you're feeling particularly generous, then please leave a 5-star review on whatever podcast app you're using. If you'd like to get in contact with us, then send an email to comiclit@gmail.com. You can also watch videos by me on the Comic Stand YouTube page, which is linked in the description. Thank you, goodbye.